Okay, let's dive right into this explainer by asking one of the most terrifying questions that faced the 13 colonies. Seriously, think about it. What happens the day after a revolution? How do you actually build a functioning government completely from scratch? We always hear about the battles, the musket fire, the grand declarations, but imagine waking up the morning after the war is won. You've got 13 totally separate entities that can barely agree on what to have for breakfast, let alone how to run a country, and suddenly they're in absolute crisis mode, desperately needing a system just to survive.
So to figure out how they pulled it off, we're going to look at architects of the Republic, how Adams and Madison built the machinery of government. We really have to look past the battlefield here and examine two vastly different men who literally engineered the complex machinery of American law. As you'll see, we're going to trace how the theoretical gears and levers of a brand new republic were designed, tested, and ultimately implemented by a couple of very, very unlikely partners.
Section 1. The Challenge of Independence.
Creating a nation out of thin air, that's a massive structural problem. And solving it demanded a really delicate balance of completely opposing personalities. It's so fascinating because our government wasn't forged by one unified hive mind. Not at all. It was built by contrasting geniuses. Just look at this dynamic. On one hand, you have the cantankerous John Adams of Massachusetts. This guy was a stout, highly educated lawyer who would absolutely argue with a brick wall. He was proudly obnoxious when he thought he was right. Then, on the other hand, you have James Madison of Virginia. Tiny frame, standing at just 5'4", super soft-spoken, and honestly, he absolutely hated the spotlight. But underneath that quiet exterior was a relentless powerhouse of political theory. Two totally different operating styles, but both were absolutely essential to getting this machine off the ground. Section 2, Adams and Ballistics. Let's focus on Adams first. Long before the Constitution was even a spark of an idea, Adams was out there cementing the core principles of justice. And he did this by risking his entire reputation as a patriot to defend the British soldiers involved in the Boston Massacre. Think about that for a second. The colonists were furious. There were literally mobs in the streets. Yet Adams stood up in court and declared that facts are stubborn things. He actually won an acquittal for the captain and most of those soldiers, proving his unwavering, rock-solid belief that everyone, no matter how hated, deserves a fair trial. The truth has to outweigh public outrage. That exact trial solidified what would become Adams' guiding philosophy, the rule of law. Simply put, a government of laws and not of men. He knew that if this new nation was going to make it, it couldn't be ruled by the unpredictable whims of a king, and it definitely couldn't be ruled by the anger of a crowd. It had to be a system where the law itself was the ultimate boss. And honestly, it's that exact same protection that keeps our modern judicial system functioning today. Justice has to be deaf to the chaotic passions of an unruly mob. Section 3. The Blueprint of Government. So Adams took this core philosophy and, quite literally, sketched out the mechanical design for how a free society should operate. He shifted gears from being a lawyer defending clients to being an architect designing a state. In 1776, he circulated a pamphlet called Thoughts on Government, which spread like wildfire. Adams understood human nature. He knew that if you let one group seize all the power, they absolutely will. So he laid out the ultimate fail-safe. Step 1, a strong executive. Step 2, a bicameral, or two-house legislature to debate the laws. And Step 3, this was crucial, judges who were completely independent from political pressure. The classic three-branch system. But Adams didn't just write about this. He beta tested it. He used his home state as the proving ground, drafting the Massachusetts Constitution of 1780. And this document didn't just govern Massachusetts. It became the primary model for the United States Constitution itself. You want to know the ultimate proof of Adams's genius for structure? That Massachusetts Constitution is still the law of the land there today. It is literally the oldest still functioning written constitution in the world. Talk about building something to last. Section 4, Madison and the Nation. Okay, so while Adams provided this brilliant philosophical blueprint, it was the quiet scholar James Madison who looked around and realized the national machinery was completely breaking down. Fast forward to the 1780s. The war's over, but the peace is a total disaster. Under the original Articles of Confederation, the national government was virtually powerless. Congress couldn't tax, they couldn't enforce the resolutions. They were basically just politely asking the states to cooperate. And the states were not cooperating. Madison was terrified. He saw that if they didn't build a real, functioning national engine, these 13 states would just fracture, turn on each other, and inevitably get swallowed right back up by European empires. This impending doom is exactly why Madison pushed so hard for the 1787 Constitutional Convention. He recognized that they didn't just need a tune-up. They needed a totally new, complex wheel in the federal machine to shift power into a unified national jurisdiction. And Madison didn't just sit around complaining. He showed up to Philadelphia hyper-prepared with the Virginia Plan. He took meticulous notes every single day of that convention. He was the quiet, invisible engine driving the creation of a true national government.
Section 5. The reluctant rights defender.
But here is where history throws us a massive curveball, and it shows you how messy political compromise really is. The guy who built the Constitution, Madison, initially fought against one of its most famous features. Just follow this timeline. In 1787, Madison actually thought listing out rights was a terrible idea. His logic was, what if you forget one? Does that mean the government can take it away? But then, politics happened. Facing intense opposition back home in Virginia and risking losing his election, he had to make a deal. To get elected and save his constitutional machine, he promised Virginia Baptists he'd support religious freedoms. And here's the amazing part. Once he promised, he went all in. He didn't just casually support the amendments, he aggressively shepherded them through the first Congress. He totally transformed into the chief architect of the very Bill of Rights he once thought was unnecessary. He proved he was willing to adapt the machine when it desperately needed an upgrade.
Section 6. An enduring constitutional legacy. Ultimately, all this theoretical machinery built by Adams and Madison translated into real-world rights that immediately, drastically changed lives. We're not just talking about high-minded philosophy debated by guys in powdered wigs in a stuffy room. This had real consequences. For example, when enslaved individuals in Massachusetts, like Mum Bet and Quock Walker, heard those words drafted by Adams declaring that all men are born free and equal, they took action. They went to court and successfully sued for their freedom. They essentially looked at the system and said, hey, you wrote this down into law, now enforce it. And the juries agreed. It proved the machinery of justice actually worked, on the ground, exactly as it was designed to. So, as we wrap up and reflect on this incredibly unlikely partnership between the brash lawyer and the quiet scholar, it leaves us with a pretty heavy question. They gave us the gears of government, the rule of law, and the protection of rights. But, a machine only works if you actually know how to run it, how to maintain it, and occasionally how to repair it. So the next time you look at the incredibly complex, sometimes very messy system that governs us today, ask yourself, are we putting in the work to maintain the machine they built, or are we just sitting back and letting the gears rust? Thanks for watching this explainer, and keep questioning how the machine works.